Hello, everyone. Welcome to the BD Teach-In with your hosts, Alex Hirst and Lizzie Penny, co-founders of the Hoxby Collective.
And if everyone can turn their video on, even if you stay on mute, then that would be brilliant, just so we can see your lovely faces and the views of your desks.
Feel free to nod along and violently agree with all the things we're saying, so it makes us feel better when we can't hear what your thoughts are.
Can I eat?
Yes, you can
camera?
eat.
Permission granted.
It's on camera, yeah.
Okay.
Andy says you're having a stand-up meeting. Oh, Sarah Reese! Love the mug.
Nice mug.
Love the mug. So we are going to take you through some slides and then take you through a couple of examples. If you have any questions as we go through, then just chip in and ask them as we go. If we're going to answer them later, then we may just hold fire and answer them later, but feel free to just unmute and ask questions as we go through.
Shall I share screen of slides?
Yes. If you dialed into Andy's Hoxby model of work session, then you'll have a bit more understanding of the context for some of this. But if there's anything you don't understand, then obviously just shout.
Definitely. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
Presumably you can see the slide and not the fact that I'm dragging all your faces around the screen.
Yeah, we can just see the slide.
All right, excellent. Okay, so for those of you, as Lizzie says, who have seen the presentation that Andy's delivered with us, we are this year focusing an awful lot on what the Hoxby model of work is and how we do things, but also how that manifests to clients through the things that we do. And the purpose of this teaching is to shed some light on how we sell Hoxby, how that manifests through the conversations that we have with clients, and some of the proposals that we've done most recently that bring that to life a little bit more for what we offer to customers. So we shall start by, hopefully, yes.
I think just some more context is last year was a tough year for Hoxby. Off the back of 3 years of growth we had, or we're still in the year where we've had a bit more of a challenging year. And as part of that, we have reshaped our proposition by looking at where we are uniquely positioned to be able to win business where nobody else can. And that's essentially what this is. This is where we've established that Hoxby is uniquely different and better than everyone else.
So, without further ado, hopefully you're all familiar with why Hoxby exists in the first place. But I will recap our why, our purpose, which is to create a happier, more fulfilled society through a world of work without bias. And through everything that we do, that's why Hoxby is here. And it's the thing that drove us to conceive of work style in the first place. And we talk about work style a lot as our kind of how. It's the thing that brings inclusivity and agility to the way we work. The very fact that our members can work from whenever and wherever they are is the thing that's providing this unique capability to combine inclusivity and a platform that is equal and fair to everyone, and agility, not only agility to our people to work in their way, but also to us to work in a more responsive and flexible way in the delivery of our work for clients. So this slide is a slide that kind of articulates that, hopefully talking to work style and the individual right to choose when and where you work, and the fact that we, through that, enable individuality and agility to business, to enable people and business to adapt and flex to the individual nature of how they want to operate. Not only are we more inclusive for society, we're actually also more productive for the economy. And actually, when we talk about the Hoxby model, we talk about our impact to the world of work, not only for the inclusivity that we can bring, but also the productivity gains that can be made for the economy at large through much, much more effective use of people's time and skills.
And so I think we've said this before, but this is where we tend to say to clients, this is what's really exciting about the Hoxby model is this is a win-win. It's a win for the client because it's a more agile and productive way to work, and therefore it can bring them competitive advantage. And it's a win for society because it's a more inclusive way of working where people are judged on their output and their talent rather than any other factors. So that always makes for a really nice story that it does both of those things.
So whether we're talking about future-proofing or marketing or HR, what we're talking about is combining the best people through pioneering methods to create new possibilities. And what we really want you guys to understand today is when we are answering a brief for a client, this should be the thing that we're demonstrating. So our purpose flows through from our mission work style into this, which is we're uniquely able to combine absolutely the perfect people for every task. We're able to bring them together in different ways, ways that other businesses simply can't, by the very nature of the fact that we're connected remotely and globally. And that connection, remote and global connection, enables us to try new methods that can elicit new possibilities. We can connect people who would otherwise never meet nor have the opportunity to collaborate. And so we should use that to our advantage to create new possibilities, to answer problems in ways that have never been tried before and arrive at solutions that are groundbreaking.
Alex has said previously that one day the Hoxbys will do something incredible like find a cure for cancer, because we are able to bring together a team that otherwise would never have been able to be brought together. And whether or not we find a cure for cancer, I'm not sure, but I think the principle of that is a really powerful one, that we have an incredible community. It's just about bringing the right people together in the right way in order to provide solutions that otherwise wouldn't come to light.
So we will do that at some point. But what we need to do is really learn how to harness our community in the best possible way. And what we're saying to clients now is that there are 3 ways in which Hoxby can answer a brief. It may be one of these ways, it may be all 3 in combination. But when we talk to clients now, we talk in terms of source, storm, and select.
Sometimes we talk about them as H-source, H-storm, and H-select. H-source we don't think quite works. So if anyone's got any other ideas for how we can make these feel Hoxby without it being H-source, then let us know. But this is where we've got to.
We'd welcome some enhancements to this to make them a little bit more proprietary. But I think they do a good job in terms of helping clients sort of bridge from what they might know or terms they might be familiar with to kind of how Hoxby works. And, I think crowdstorming and crowdsourcing, they are kind of terminologies that people are sort of familiar with. But equally, yes, we are a crowd, but we're also a community. So we're not just a crowd of hundreds of thousands of people. We are a curated group of very talented people who bring a great deal of knowledge and expertise to the process. And so, crowdsourcing is not quite right, not quite the right terminology.
I was talking to actually someone this morning who said that very same thing, that as a business, they've been thinking of crowdsourcing, but they don't want to go out to an unqualified community. So the power of Hoxby is that if you can H-source, then you're doing it from within a pre-qualified community, which the sourcing example we see every time someone posts anything in the work channel. The power of the responses is unbelievable. So we kind of see that live every time we do that.
Yeah, so should we go through the 3 in turn? So sourcing is where you go out to the community and the community provides you with information. It's a one-way exchange where it might be that you're looking for consumer opinion or insight into a particular subject area. And really that's about gathering information. So we've done that. We've done all three of these for Dermalex, and this is the example that we'll use through these. But within Dermalex, we used crowdsourcing to create a subset of the community of people who were consumers of this particular product, a skincare product, and we used that group to source their kind of experiences, both of other products and of the brand in question. So we used it to kind of gather information, and we think that there's an opportunity there to remunerate Hoxby's through an incentive fee. And certainly when we talk to clients about selling this as a service, so if you wanted to crowdsource some research, that might be the way in which we would do that. The second way is Storm. So storming is where you bring Hoxby's together around a particular challenge or a question. I think Team Rollercoaster is a great example of this very recently, where we've brought people in and there's a conversation, there's an exchange, and everyone in that group is working towards trying to arrive at a solution or building on the work of. So this is kind of, if Source is peer-to-peer, then Storm is very much peer with peer. This is about a collective effort around a particular challenge. And where we did this with Dermalex, we did it to arrive at campaign ideas for the brand. And there was a bounty fee attached to that. So the group is sort of incentivized to mobilize behind creating big ideas, and where there are kind of multiple people attached to an idea or who get together to create the idea, there's a bounty fee for them or for the person who arrive at the idea that's chosen, the winning idea, if you like.
I think with the Dermalex campaign ideas, we had 4 kind of bounty prizes. I think we had 3 for the 3 that were put forward to the client, and then 1 for the final one that was chosen to go forward. So the way you structure that can be, you can discuss that with the client and see what would suit them best in terms of, do they want lots of ideas where they each get a small bounty if they're in the top 10, or do you want just one largely remunerated idea? And when we talk to clients about this one, we say it's up to you to work with us to work out who you want in that Storm crowd as well. Do you want people who know your industry really well, people who don't know your industry? Do you want people who are your target audience? So you can bring together an interesting group in order to create the right facilities or facilitate the right answers coming out of it.
The great thing about Source and Storm is you will generate a volume of thinking, some of which will be wide of the mark, some of which will be expected, and some of which will be value add, different, interesting, and then it's kind of down to the core team who are running the project to filter that, present it, and package it up in the right way. But the opportunity here is to think about idea generation, or think about the way work gets done in a different way, attach a remuneration model against it that's different too. And clients are really interested in that. They're paying then for the output and for some breadth of thinking and some filtration, rather than simply time.
I've got
so the third. Oh yeah, shoot, Sally Page.
Talking about that, how do you see our path moving from using some of these tools that we've got at the moment to win work? So at proposal stage, where it's very much kind of community based and voluntary and us all helping each other out, and moving from that to building it in as part of a remuneration.
Can we come back to that?
Yes,
because actually I think, and Sarah has asked a similar question about, is this before or after the brief? And actually, I think the examples we're going to talk you through, which are the innovation proposal for Diageo and the Unilever proposal, are good examples of how, for those ones, actually, we've taken a traditional brief and we've turned it into a brief that more fits with this model.
Yeah.
Both to a positive response from clients.
Great.
And can I ask a question? Sorry.
Yeah.
Does this, and we may even put this up later, but does it just apply to, so of all of our product lines, does it apply to everything? So finance, like operations, is it squarely in marketing and the creative side to it, or how do you kind of see it working that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it definitely lends itself better to some business units than others. So I wouldn't suggest that we source for finance. I think that finance just is more of a select function. Okay. Whereas I think marketing very much, because the ideation aspect and anything with ideation more lends itself to the spectrum of the three. Yeah. But I do also think we should challenge ourselves as to how best to use these areas. Because you could argue that the Unilever brief, which is a content creation brief, felt very much like a select brief, but we incorporated elements of Storm and Source in order to answer it in a uniquely Hoxby and value add way. Yeah, so okay. I think it's more just about having the lens that Hoxby can work in this way, and in every proposal we do thinking, does that provide better answers and better value for the client?
Okay, cool.
Yeah, let's not forget at the end of the day that the purpose of this presentation and these three methodologies is to make us distinctive and to give us a competitive edge that clients will remember. So the last of the three is select. So this is about selecting a team to work together against a brief, and it's where team curation come in. But it's more than that. It should be about we're selling absolutely the best people to answer this brief in a manner that we've thought about, and we're considering who we're bringing together, combining their expertise perfectly to meet the need in every case. So rather than just using an employee base that we happen to have, we're pulling together a specific team. That is still a compelling and unique part of the Hoxby proposition, and we mustn't overlook that. But I think what we're saying is that's probably where a lot of our solutions are coming from at the moment, but we mustn't be afraid to look more broadly at how we use the community to answer a brief and pull these three things together in different ways to offer more value to clients and to try and give them as much exposure to the length and breadth of our community as we can. We're a big organisation, and we want them to get the benefit of everyone, not just necessarily the benefit of the team that's been curated for that specific project.
Just to go back to Sarah's question, which was kind of in two parts. One of those was, are these all post-project brief? And I think they are always after some sort of a brief from the client, but they aren't always after we've won the work. Team Rollercoaster is a good example, and frustrating that we didn't win that project, but a good example of how you can put together an incredibly powerful pitch based on answering it in a different way. And actually with Unilever, they kind of gave us a verbal brief. We chose to answer it in this way, and then they essentially wrote a brief that asked us to answer it in the way we had. So I think that it's about us taking an opportunity to show how we're different and better. And the same with Huel, actually. With Huel, we had a conversation I had a conversation with the client about how we could potentially work. And I said, lots of people have strong feelings about Huel. And she said, talk me through some of those, those feelings that people have in the community. And that's amazing to immediately be able to draw on 50 different responses from the community. So it can be good in order to nurture a relationship, not just to win a project.
I think, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I think it would be nice to get to a place where we can remunerate Hoxby's for their contribution to the process of winning work, as well as the process of delivering it. And when we get to a scale where we're familiar with how this works and we've got some back-end systems that enable it, it would be great to be able to attach internal bounties, internal incentive fees, and to package up the way we work internally much more along these lines as well. Because as it becomes increasingly part of our service offer, so we need to be really comfortable with operating that way, and not only in what we push back to clients, but also what we want to do for Hoxby as well. If we want to come up with stuff for ourselves using these three different ways of doing so.
And I think we have talked to Andy about that from an operations perspective, so that we can also, as an organisation, get into our community, get into the mindset of which aspects of the core should be select and which should be storm and which should be source. Because at the moment our go-to is select in the same way that it is with any client work. So we're going to try and get better at kind of interrogating that more. Is everyone happy with the principle of the three and the difference between them? Yeah, many thumbs ups.
Excellent. All right, good. So that is the key thing to take away from today, these three things. We're going to talk about some other bits and pieces, and we're going to look at a couple of examples now too. But those three things are the main things to take away. And when a brief comes in, to be thinking about these three things. And I think trust when we say these are the things that are resonating with the clients that we're talking to. You stand a better chance of winning the business if you can weave these three, or one or a combination of these three things into your proposal. The other thing that we've talked about with a couple of clients is just how it works from a process perspective. So one of the big things that they have question marks about is, how can we verify or vouch for the quality of our members? So we talk about our process in terms of the application through filtration into the community, the steps that you guys have to go on to become a member, and just how grueling that is, and how you're tasked at every stage before becoming an accepted member of the Hoxby community, and how you're then made available for team curation. And then, from the client's perspective, that happens after we've received a brief, we pull together a team, we work out a plan, and we go and deliver it. But the interesting stat here is that we've had 15,500 applicants who started the process of becoming a Hoxby. Only 458 are actually members of the community, and that's quite a compelling narrative when you're having a conversation with a prospect about just how selective we are. We could have 15,000 members in our community. We could go out with a volume number, but that's not what we want to be. We want to be about quality, not quantity. We want to be about having the best people, because we know that as other businesses seek to emulate our model, it's going to be the caliber of our people and our reputation that sets us apart. And that's where our first mover advantage can be gained. So that's how we look at it and how we think about it. And I think these numbers are really useful for you guys to have awareness of as well. Okay. I'm not necessarily saying that this is a slide that you would drop into a presentation, but if you ever need it, it's here.
I was going to say it might be good if you were working in a certain field to show the depth of the amount of people that work in that area or that area of expertise. That may be bespoke per project, but that kind of shows that you're not just the team in the room. There is 100 people who know this and can contribute in a smaller way, which gives you the power to deliver all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Nice bridge, Andy. It's as if you knew what we were going to say, because there's an example of that in a couple of the proposals I think that we're going to share with you now, where we kind of talk about, where we show sort of the access to the wider community. So I think without further ado, we'll go on to that. Should we look at Diageo first?
Yeah, let's look at Diageo. So I think what's interesting about Diageo was that was a cool brief in that they said, we're looking for disruptive approaches and different agencies who can operate on a lean model. So they said, we can't go to any of our big traditional innovation agencies because we're only looking at spending 20 to 50 grand a pop. And Sarah, I think this goes back to your question about pricing. That what we said to them was, you need almost to have a base price for your project, but then what you put in your bounty is up to you, and therefore how much you get back correlates to that. It partly correlates to bounty, and it partly correlates to just whether or not it's a cool brief that people want to take their time to answer, what capacity Hoxby's have at that particular time, how passionate people are about, for example, booze, or your subject area. So I think for us, we're looking to test it and to work with various different clients in this way and see what comes back. The Dermalex budgets were quite big, but the bounty was quite small, and we still had a really positive response back. It was about skin conditions, and a lot of people in the community had skin conditions, so it just resonated with them, and they were just happy to be engaged with it. So what we did here was, this was disruptive innovation, and Alex, if you just want to skip through, we essentially, sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'm probably a little bit behind, sorry.
We talked about productive and inclusive way to work. We talked about our standard. In fact, Alex, do you want to go back? That productive and inclusive way to work, that is an updated version of that front slide that we often use, which looks at agility and inclusivity. So it goes back to that, the dual benefit. So that's the updated kind of world map slide. That one you should all know. That one you should all know.
I think this is an interesting example, this Diageo example of a client who's come to us with we know a bit about what we want to do, but we're not necessarily sure how Hoxby can help. It's not we'd like you to deliver X, Y, Z, and here's the budget. This is more kind of earlier, more upstream in the process of winning the work, if you like. So it's kind of putting in a little bit of legwork up front to get them to understand or realise the potential of working with Hoxby. So we recap the brief here, that they are really just looking to find agency partners who can help them come up with disruptive innovations. They need people to help them across strategy, creative and future trends, and they're looking for fast-paced, nimble partners who can bring disruptive approaches. And so we've just kind of recapped that in simple terms in the upfront. I'm just going to see if I can skip on. Notice how we've changed the imagery from the bespoke pictures that you get within the proposal template. Feel free to do that. I know it takes a bit of time, but it makes all the difference.
The creative director.
So what we tried to do with the response is say, look, here's the brief that you come to us with. In essence, our sell, so the thing that Hoxby is selling to you on, is on the basis of to get disrupt out, you need to get disrupt in. So if you want disruptive innovation, you need to be disruptive in the way you go about doing it. If you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And if you go to an agency that's like any other, you'll get work like any other. So we're positioning ourselves as disruptive by nature. We're disrupting our industry. We're disruptive in the way that we've been created and in the vision that we have for the world of work. We've also said, that we're different by design. So we've designed ourselves to make best use of global talent, and we've said we've got infinite ideas. We actually calculated that with 450 people, we actually can create 91 million different teams of 3, which is you could argue that is infinite.
It's not, is it?
It's not infinite, but it
is a lot.
It is, because we're always adding people to the community. So that number is always going up, although we didn't say that here. Certainly, there's a lot of combinations, and we're living in the future. So we're a community of 450 people, made up of we're all forward thinking. We all have an idea of what the future looks like, and we're all capable of kind of bringing that to reality. So what we did here, I think, is create 4 benefits that really distinctly answer the brief and position Hoxby as being something quite different. Now, we have our kind of standard benefits of Hoxby, but I think it's always worth just thinking about, okay, what do we want them to think about us that's different? What do we want them to take away from the experience of working with Hoxby? So we packaged then up a response to that brief as the Diageo Disrupt Hub. So we said to them, what you're trying to do is create lots of innovative ideas. What we want to do is give you the solution to that, which is the Disrupt Hub, which is the home of disruptive thinking, a single source of limitless new ideas designed to recruit, re-recruit, and disrupt on a brief-to-brief basis. So what we did here was use some very bad art and design to create a brand or a sub-brand.
To be fair, we did this in like an hour and a half. So.
Yeah, it was quick. It was quick, but it gave them an idea of how we would approach the challenge. So create something, a hub where disruption can happen.
I think the other thing about this one was we weren't answering a brief. They'd given us 3 example small briefs, and we were instead answering the general principle of how we would go about working in partnership with them to answer those sorts of briefs in future.
Definitely. Now, hopefully this will be, reusable content for you guys, but what we did was create a slide here that just sums up how it works. So you'd have the Diageo Disrupt Innovation team on the right hand side. So that's effectively the client team. They would have an interface with the Disrupt Hub team, and the Disrupt Hub team acts as the point of continuity for Diageo. It's kind of a core team of Hoxby's essentially. They receive and respond to briefs, but also they use this disruptor community of Hoxby's, but also potentially Diageo employees that could be brought into this disruptor community and involved in the process of crowdstorming and crowdsourcing, and be participatory in the process of coming up with new ideas on the basis that ideas can come from anywhere, and that actually it'd be great to be able to involve Diageo in the process. And as a result, we can create limitless ideas by working together in this way. Using, and around it, you'll see on the right-hand side, a Diageo way of disrupting. So what we would propose to do with Diageo is build a sort of magic formula for effective ideas and new innovations. So they told us when we had a conversation with them that they understand what a good idea is made up of, or what an innovation that will succeed needs to have. So we said we'd work with them to understand that, decode it, and weave it into our system of creating ideas.
I think what was interesting about this slide was the main piece of feedback was that actually they wanted to be even closer to it. They wanted the Disrupt Team Hub to be a mixture of them and us, so that this wasn't kind of an arm's length relationship. It was a shared, almost sub-community, which is actually an interesting question that has been put to Alex and I by another client now. Could they pay to be a member of the Hoxby community and be part of the Hoxby community? Currently, we've said that isn't something that we do, but we thought it was a really interesting question that anyone as a client would want to pay just to be a part of it and be able to ask questions or whatever of the community. So that, we haven't kind of progressed that thought, but we thought it's a compliment, and it's interesting that clients are even interested in doing that.
Is that in terms of accessing the talent, or is that in terms of being involved in the decision making about behind the project, co-creation and all that kind of stuff? Do
you mean the feedback on this slide, or do you mean being part of
Hoxby as a client? Is that
it was about it's, as Sarah's just said, number of questions each month for a retainer. That was exactly what we talked about. Then basically being allowed to put a certain number of questions to the community in the work channel each month in return for paying us a retainer for the privilege. So it wasn't so much about how do we deliver projects and deliver work. It was purely the talent and the minds and thinking of the Hoxbys. Quite interesting.
Yeah, we weren't prepared to sell them that just yet.
Even for £1 billion.
Too special, you guys. All right, I think I'm going to whiz through the rest of this prezzo, but I think it's worth just seeing. So we went into a little bit of detail about who the Disrupt Hub team would be. We created false titles around Disruptor General and Director of Disruption. But we gave them a sense that we were building a core team of people who were going to have specific responsibilities to coordinate the wider community. And then, slight tech fail. We also did a little bit of a promo around Slack. So we suggested that we brought them into our Slack environment. We told them a bit about Slack and how it would work and how it could foster innovation. And, hopefully encouraging the thought that new methodologies might breed new ideas, and that actually it's worth them exploring some of these. We then talked a little bit more about who we've got, and we explained that we asked the community to give us their thoughts on the best disruptive brand that you've come across, and then we shared the results of that with them.
That was a good example of how we used source in the creation of this. Like, we literally gave no time to say what's the best disruptive brand you come up with, and people just came up with so many different responses straight away, and it just meant we could use this slide to illustrate the power of the crowd in real life rather than just theory like the rest of it.
That's right. Sorry. Yeah. So the point was, in 90 minutes we had 60 answers, and here's a snapshot.
Some of them.
Yeah. We then talk about the 3 methodologies and how they would integrate into the Disrupt Hub. And then we talked about the process that we would follow for coming up with ideas. So a brief from which we would create, filter, refine, and ultimately approve. And then just showing them who would be involved at each stage in the process potentially, and just simplistically what that might look like in terms of actions.
So I think, Alex, do you want to get the...
Yeah, I think that's probably it for this one, isn't it?
We'll just get the other one up. And in the meantime, did Diageo go for it? Our contact left, as is so often the case. She's looking at working with us at her new place. In the meantime, it's taken a while to get the details of the new contact who's replacing her. But we are now going through procurement with Diageo in order to start working this way. And the new team love this approach. So it's not over the line yet, but it continues to look promising. So certainly everyone we've talked to at Diageo about this proposal loves it. So I think it just goes to show when you get a progressive team that want to do things differently. And the same with the Unilever stuff we're about to talk you through. Again, internal team changes and the like have slowed us down, but the response has been extremely positive to both of these proposals. And those others who've come forward, other agencies, have been nowhere near us. I think that's the thing. We're just completely setting ourselves apart when we approach things in this way. It's very exciting. So we definitely don't want to go through all these slides, Alex.
No, there's
a 100-slide presentation.
Too many.
So I think on this one, we should probably skip on to the holocracy bit, because this one I think is interesting in that the last one was kind of an innovation brief, whereas this was a content brief. And we essentially responded with a new business model idea to pilot, rather than, skip through all this. So we went back to the theory, this slide, so we went back to the theory and basically said, you think you want this, a classic content agency, but instead, why not think about it in more of a holacratic way? And particularly to avoid incurring overheads, why not think about working with us flexibly in order to create teams who it can work perfectly in 2 ways. Firstly, you can curate larger teams than you need so that you're drawing on a bigger pool. And secondly, you can capitalize on capacity gaps, which for us is one of the holy grails. Hoxby is a community of freelancers, and we want those freelancers to be able to smooth out their workload. So essentially, our ideal was to have bigger teams whereby people can fill their capacity gaps with paid work in this way. And it might be work at a lower rate than that person might normally take, but it would be work that was really flexible, and therefore we felt that would work. So that's our kind of, in terms of what we're talking about in this session, I think that's what's really fascinating about what we took to Unilever on this project, was that it was just a completely different approach, and the way that we were proposing to bring together teams was really different. Alex, do you want to talk about squads, tribes and chapters?
So this was kind of happening concurrently to the conversations we were having with Andy about how we structure Hoxby, and some of what we're going to be doing as an organisation this year to become more exponential in the way we work. And really, this is about thinking of your talent pool quite differently. So what we wanted to do is bring this to life visually. So on the left-hand side, you'd have your kind of petri dish, I suppose, of different people working together as a team, each with fragmented tasks, so set responsibilities, and that those are those people have a remit within a a market. So on the right hand side, you'd see that they'd be in grey, a local market squad, as we would call it. But we would also create global chapters. So if you take the influencers as an example here, they're highlighted in coral. So the influencers would form a chapter, so they can communicate with themselves as a group, and at a global scale align behind how they're influencing, the things that are working or not working, and how to kind of get the most for Cleanopedia brand globally. Whereas the kind of global tribe is kind of everyone all together in one group, and I suppose you could liken that to the Hoxby collective at large, and our global chapters might be our departments as we think of them, PLs as an example. So we presented this to them as a model that's scalable across multiple markets or regions, and based on task-based delivery, which is a very, very different approach.
So this is an extremely long proposal, and you're all welcome to enjoy it at your leisure, for those of you who don't already know it off by heart. We won't talk through it in any more detail now, because I think that we'll be digressing from the key kind of 3 ways to operate. But I think the point being that both of these proposals really set us apart by being very different in terms of what we were proposing. Different and better, rather than simply trying to act like an agency or like a normal agency, but deliver it differently behind the scenes. And that's something that we've been trying to do more and more, is bring the unique disruptive value of our model to the forefront of what we do and the way that we respond to proposals and our approaches generally, rather than us pretending to be a kind of traditional agency but just doing things differently behind the scenes. So that was really what we wanted to talk to you about today.
Does anyone have any questions?
I think, Sarah, we've missed your point about having how do traditional agencies work, and I think that is something that we always talk about, and it's only a matter of time, I'm sure, before we have that slide, because both the selection process and the kind of ways of working is so different from traditional agencies that I do think that's something that we always try and kind of tease out.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're presenting the 3 things that really make our approach unique and incredibly rewarding, I think it's then really interesting to compare that to what the traditional alternative is, because I think it then really makes that like apples and pears. There's no way you're going to get the ability to perform and deliver, as you will, from the pool of talent and the energies and etc. that we have.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
I was going to say, in terms of, if I'm a client who just worked with traditional agencies, I think we need a case study or something which just really distills it down, so we can just show them this is how we do it. Even if we just use an internal Hoxby example, because the 2 pitches there, which I was part of, which they haven't closed, so it's kind of like we've not done it in anger, but we do it in anger in Hoxby. So I think that's maybe the roller coaster idea is a good one, but we didn't win the pitch, so it's kind of like,
I think we can use Dermalex as an example, because we've used all 3 methodologies within that example, and we delivered it, paid work. There's no reason why that can't be a case study. I think the important thing is to just start selling on the basis of this, thinking about Hoxby in this way, and ultimately that will start to bleed through in the work we do. And the case studies that we'll have then will naturally come through. It'll take a bit of time, but that's all part of the evolution.
With Diageo, Andy, we've said, we'd really like to try something new that we haven't tried before, and we'll be completely open with you about the fact we haven't tried it before, because we want to see what happens. So if you're game, then we are to experiment, and they seem to be up for that, albeit they're talking about dipping their toe in the water with not an external facing project for them, something that's just internal. But I think for the, and as you know, Andy, this is the challenge with Unilever, where I think it works best is where there's a small opportunity they can try with us first to see how this works in practice, because it's all well and good us preaching it and even having great case studies. But we know from being inside the community that the community is really impressive. Whenever you ask a question, there's always an incredible response. But people don't know that until they see it. So if they can just give us something small, then it's powerful what they can then see back. So I think with Diageo, that's what we've been essentially saying to them is, get us through procurement, give us something small to answer in the short term, and then we can build it from there.
Do you think then it's worth us talking to innovation departments who want to try something differently as like a first set of people to try out with, even if it's a small project? Like I know Sarah with food and that kind of stuff, that could be something to look at, and even if it's small projects, it adds to our portfolio of stuff that we do and could maybe
I think this is Andy, I think that's a great shout and a great example of where what we want to try and do is get the BDs talking to each other about the proposals they're doing, because this proposal for Diageo could be relevant to lots and lots of different industries, lots of businesses and places where we've got contacts, and there'd be no harm in us packaging it up and sending it to lots of different organisations just as an idea. So yeah, I think this is hopefully we can start to create blueprints that enable BDs to kind of take each of these new opportunities to their individual areas.
I do think it's also about innovative people, not just innovation departments. So I think it is innovation departments, but every now and then you just find a person that just wants to do something differently, which is brilliant. Often those people do then move on or whatever, which can be frustrating, but hopefully they take you with them when they go. And I think there is that aspect as well, is that if you just find that one kind of lighthouse person that's wanting to try something different and wants that to kind of be their reputation, then that's awesome, because then we're exactly what they're looking for.
I think for me as well, the big takeaway from this for the BDs is to encourage us to think about those briefs differently, because you're always under time pressure, right? It's always like, it needs to have been done last week. Do this, we want to get this person. I think it's so easy to just work with what we've done before, or something very traditional, or and I think the fact that you've presented this to other clients and had such great reception, the slides and the deck is already kind of there. It just encourages us, I think, every time we get a brief in, to just look at it through a different lens, and as you say, talk to each other in the community and see how we could leverage it.
I think actually Victoria's just made a good point about small businesses as well. Where we've got lean budgets, it's an interesting thing to just try, but being honest with them that with a low budget you might not get as much back. But that's an interesting thing to test as well, where, as you say, Sally, you don't want to be writing a mammoth proposal, but can we just adapt this in order to test it?
I think it's really interesting. It's really exciting, by the way, guys, thank you. But, some of the conversations I'm having with Yeo Valley at the moment are really because they want to do things differently. They've used big agencies in the past, but they've got to a point where the same old answers. And they need a fresh pair of eyes to look at it. They also don't want junior people. They want people who just get it instinctively and can hit the ground running on it. Obviously that's really exciting. And then I just had a conversation yesterday that said we've got a small project to start with that's coming, but actually there's other areas of the business we're not happy with. Actually, if you guys demonstrate what you can do here, then we'll move on to different discussions around PR and so I think it's taking the time to just explain it in a little bit more detail as well. Really saying, actually, these are the reasons that stand us apart versus anybody else, before you.
And it is really transferable. So it's worth, if you can explain it as a concept, then it can almost be applied to any one of those opportunities you're talking about, because if they buy into the concept and they've tested it somewhere, then they can reapply it.
I think the insight you just tapped into there, Sarah, around you've been using big agencies for a while and getting the same answers. That is the same insight as we had from Merck when we went to see them, when we talked to them about it. That's what they were saying, and what they wanted to get from working with us is different solutions. And that's where when we talked about we combine the best people through pioneering methods to create new possibilities. That's what that means. It's about new methods like sourcing, storming, and select can create new answers. and particularly when you start using the best people in the world to do it. It's very exciting. Guys, thank you so much. I'm conscious of time. If we want to ask any more convo stuff, questions, let's do it in the channel for the BDs. But in the meantime, we'll let you get on with the rest of the day.
Fab.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Many thumbs up.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for
Bye-bye.
being nodding and generally supportive.
Bye, everyone.
See you soon.